Welcome to What Utility Is and Isn't, Part 5 of the Practical Decision Making course offered by the Guild of the Rose. Visit guildoftherose.org for more details. Now that we have covered probability trees and expected value calculations, it is time to learn the final major concept required before we can build fully realized decision trees: utility. Utility, in the context of decision theory, means something like subjective value. Utility is an abstract measure by which you express relative preferences numerically. Utility is the anchor that attaches your inner feelings about value and preferences to numbers in a consistent and useful way, just like subjective probabilities are numbers that anchor your non-quantitative feelings and beliefs about likelihoods. And you can more effectively communicate the nuances of your thoughts to others by this method of expressing preference, just like we used probability to express the nuances of expectation. The easiest heuristic is just probabilities represent beliefs, utilities represent preferences. Let's go through a very basic initial example. I am ordering breakfast at a restaurant. I would prefer pancakes to a croissant, and I would prefer a croissant to crepes. In fact, I do not like crepes at all. So my utility valuation of pancakes might be 100, my utility valuation of a croissant might be 70, and my utility valuation of crepes might be 0. Now we can use the tools of expected value and probability trees to think about complex and uncertain situations involving breakfast. For example, if I'm choosing between a cafe which may not have pancakes but probably will have croissants, and a diner which probably will have both. You might ask, what if I don't know how I feel about the relative utility value of a variety of outcomes? What if I'm just as uncertain about my own preferences as I am about the likelihood of outcomes? This actually happens a lot if you were having to weigh very different types of outcomes against each other, or trading off between emotionally different seeming possibilities, such as love, money, and prestige. We will introduce tools for breaking down your uncertainty about your preferences and properly valuing very distinct outcomes in a subsequent video. If you're still not clear on how to think about utility, don't worry. The next few videos will provide more examples. Again, we are talking about utility within the context of decision theory. Utility in context of utilitarian ethics is actually a very different thing. Because you may be coming to this course with some prior understanding of utility based in some other context, let's dispense with what decision-theoretic utility isn't. Utility is not well-being nor wealth. It is not happiness. A near synonym would be expected value, with the caveat that utility refers to purely subjective first-person value. Utility can't be traded between people. In fact, there is no truly rigorous or practical way to equate utility values between two individuals in the first place. This is an acknowledged and unsolved problem in the field of utilitarian ethics as well. Maximizing global utility would be a great idea if anybody knew how to do it. Don't be too concerned that I have just revealed a fundamental flaw in the basis for effective altruism, because you can recover everything relevant to interpersonal utility from the basis of subjective utility. You just have to remember that when you try to help others, you aren't maximizing other people's utility. You're assigning your own utility valuation to preferable outcomes involving other people and selecting your own highest utility, which, if you're altruistic, will benefit others. This may seem pedantic, but I cannot count how many times I have seen people become confused about ethics because they misunderstand whose utility they're thinking about. As an exercise, you can optionally write a short essay explaining how the concept of utility monster is incoherent within this framework. Finally, utility can't be accumulated. You don't get utility when you get an outcome that you want. What you get, obviously, is the outcome itself. You might be wondering why we need a concept such as this. There are two major reasons, and many minor reasons that you yourself may discover as you become familiar with the concept. The first major reason is that using utility correctly imposes consistency onto your decision-making. One major source of confusion in human decision-making is implicit inconsistency between preferences. For example, preferring blue to red, preferring red to green, and preferring green to blue. This preference ordering is circular, inconsistent, and irrational. Using utility to value your outcomes here forces you to break this cycle before you can move on. The second major reason to use utility is that it creates clarity. When considering complex life problems, there are always two distinct types of confusion: uncertainty about what you predict will happen, and uncertainty about what you actually want. It is natural for us to confuse these two types of uncertainty. So far, we have been practicing the art of predicting what will happen. Now we will begin the work of understanding what we actually want and how much. Once we have understood both types of uncertainty, our decisions will become clear, and our decisiveness will naturally increase. Once you internalize this definition of utility, you may find it liberating. When you put the consistency of subjective preference at the center of your decision-making framework, you simply sidestep a number of traps that smart people tend to talk themselves into, such as feeling like you need to answer complex philosophical questions before you can make a valid decision. A valid decision is simply the one that best suits your preferences once you have taken the effort to express your preferences in a consistent way. If you're interested in taking this course, visit guildoftherose.org for more details, or patreon.com/guildoftherose to join the guild. Click the link in the sidebar to view the playlist of videos for practical decision making.